Very exciting news. I will be heading down to Boston for Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals. I'm more than excited. This will be my first time actually in Boston and my first time watching the Bruins, where I can actually wear my Marchand jersey and not get yelled at by everybody on the streets. I'm so excited for the Stanley Cup Finals, so I'll definitely be making some posts on Instagram. You can go check me out on Instagram, by the way, connorscorner.hockey, and on my YouTube channel as well. So make sure to stay tuned for that. And now, let's get into the episode. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode. I hope you guys are having a fantastic weekend. Welcome back to the channel, and it's finally that time of year again. Stanley Cup Finals are here. Game 1 starts Monday night between the Boston Bruins and the St. Louis Blues. Now, personally, I think, obviously, as a Bruins fan, this will be a series where I'll definitely be a lot more emotionally involved than I have been for the last 5 years. But I think for even non-Bruins and non-Blues fans, for just maybe a fan of, say, not the Blackhawks, they've been here, maybe like the Buffalo Sabres or any other fan in the National Hockey League, a casual fan, a diehard fan of another team, I think this Stanley Cup Finals will be a bit easier to kind of pick a team that you're really cheering for and definitely get more emotionally involved. I know I'm from Toronto. I know a lot of people in Toronto are definitely cheering for the Blues for obvious reasons. Obviously, I hate the Bruins, beat them for the second straight year, still bragging about that. And I think a lot of Sharks fans especially, they were definitely upset with the Blues kind of intent to injure some of the Sharks players. I don't know how true that was, but I know a lot of the Sharks fans definitely felt that. So I'm sure they'll be going for the Bruins. So I think these two teams definitely have their fan bases that hate them. And obviously, some of the best fans in the National Hockey League belong to these teams. So I think this should be a fantastic Stanley Cup Finals. Before we get into the episode, guys, go make sure to hit the subscribe button if you guys are new to the channel. Like I said in the last video, we'll have a lot of content over the 2019 Stanley Cup Finals and content going into the offseason as well. So without further ado, let's get into the episode. All right, so let's start with some big question marks going into the series for both teams, or the big question, I guess you could say, that everybody's been talking about. Rest versus rust situation. Now, the Bruins have 11 days of rest going into the Stanley Cup Finals, which is a lot. And I heard a stat today saying teams with the most rest going into the Cup Final are 0-6. So not a great stat for the Bruins, a great stat for the Blues. I think, personally, I don't know how big of an issue this is going to be for Boston. I'm going to tell you why. I think Boston definitely obviously has a more of a veteran core that should be able to keep their minds focused on the Cup Final. I mean, it's also not the second round. Like, this is what you play for all years, the Cup Final. This is the biggest game of a lot of these guys' careers. Guys like DeBrus, the younger guys should hopefully be able to stay focused, but that's what they said, like with the Hurricanes and the Islanders. So I'm not 100% sure. Also, I think it should help them get 100% healthy. I mean, Chara didn't play Game 4 against the Hurricanes. From what I've heard, it wasn't that bad of an injury that did occur. So I think Chara should be closer to 100%, or however close you can get to 100% when you're this far into the playoffs. I think Chara like they said, Chara will be ready for Game 1. On the St. Louis side of things, I think the rest, they got enough rest where they'll be ready for game number 1, but not too much where they could end up being rusty like the Bruins. Now, they did have a hard-hitting series against the Sharks. That is a very physical team, so we'll see how worn down they are going to the Cup Final. But I think for, I guess, a goaltending matchup, Binnington versus Rask. Rask has been the best goaltender in the Stanley Cup playoffs so far. Binnington's been fantastic, but Rask might be a bit cool going into the Cup Finals, while Binnington will have rest, but not too much where, maybe he hasn't seen a puck in an actual game in 11 days. You know what I'm saying? So, I think goaltending could be a big question mark in going into the series. Can Binnington handle the pressure, and is Rask warm enough to play Game 1 like he did over the last 3 series? So goaltending is definitely going to be a question. Another question mark is power plays. What team will have the better power play? Obviously, the first 3 series has definitely been Boston. They've had a deadly power play. Can St. Louis shut them down? That big power play line's been spectacular. That's how Marchand Pastrnak have gotten most of their points, has been from that power play. And I think St. Louis's penalty kill has been average, but obviously so were the Hurricanes' penalty kill against the Bruins, and Boston kind of took control of the series on the power play. So St. Louis power play's kind of gone back on track, but you can't compare the two. So that's one factor that the Bruins could definitely kind of take control of this series is with the power play. I also read that on, I think it was NBC, that this kind of question about all that game tape. Now, the Bruins have had that much more time to kind of look for the Blues' weaknesses and strengths in their game. So Boston does have a lot more game tape that they can evaluate going into the Stanley Cup Finals. So that could be massive for the coaching staff of the Boston Bruins, while the Blues only have really 4 games against the Carolina Hurricanes, who Boston kind of destroyed them over those 4 games. If you kind of think about it, Boston was the better team. So Boston definitely has more quality game tape for the Blues than the Blues have for Boston. So that could be a big help for Boston and Bruce Cassidy going into the Cup Finals. Really, I think this could be a very evenly matched Stanley Cup Finals. This could definitely go 7 games. I looked at a breakdown of goals per period for both teams, and they're exactly the same for every period. So that's crazy, including overtime as well. So that is unbelievable. This is going to be a fantastic Stanley Cup Finals. Make sure to go let me know what you guys think your predictions will be for the Cup Final down below. It's been a fantastic Stanley Cup playoffs. A lot of surprises. I don't think anybody would have thought we'll see the St. Louis Blues in the Stanley Cup Finals. And for that matter, I don't think a lot of people picked Boston in the Cup Final either. So this is going to be a fantastic series. Again, let me know your thoughts down below, and we'll see you guys on the next episode.